Hello, everyone, and welcome to New Consciousness Review. I'm Miriam Knight, and our guest today is Dr. Jeffrey Bland. He is the father and the face of functional medicine, a new model of healthcare for preventing and reversing chronic illness, which we will explore today. He was a founding board member of Bastyr University, the first accredited school of naturopathic medicine in the U.S., and he has mentored doctors like Mehmet Oz, Joel Furman, and Mark Hyman, and he's taught practitioners around the world. Dr. Bland founded the Institute for Functional Medicine in Seattle, as well as the Personalized Lifestyle Medicine Institute, and he has just come out with a fascinating new book called The Disease Delusion, Conquering the Causes of Chronic Illness for a Healthier, Longer, and Happier Life. Dr. Bland, Dr. Jeffrey Bland, welcome. I'm so pleased to have you with us.
Well, Miriam, I can't tell you how privileged I am to be with you. Thank you so much, and I really look forward to this discussion.
You know, your book crystallizes for me the long overdue revisioning of healthcare, where doctors actually talk to the individual and find out what's going on in their lives, you know, instead of just looking at lab results. This is an integral approach that I think is the start of a real revolution in medicine. Now, you've been working along these lines for a long time. Do you think the revolution is finally taking hold?
Yes, you know, this evolution that you're talking about is really almost revolution, and because of the nature of how rapidly things are changing. And I don't think it can change fast enough for all the reasons that we know, that we have a virtual epidemic of chronic disease happening in our society right now. Type 2 diabetes is growing exponentially. We see more and more dementia in our society. We see this autism spectrum disorder increasing dramatically in our children. We see arthritis becoming, in various forms, more common. Things like thyroiditis, autoimmune disease of the thyroid gland, gluten-related problems of the intestinal tract and the nervous system. We're seeing a very, very dramatic rise in the burden of chronic illness. And the way that we've been treating these conditions, which I call pill for the ill approach, just has not been working. We are not seeing it being successful in beating back the rising tide of these diseases. So I believe that this revolution that we're observing right now, which is the age of the individual in healthcare, it's personalization. It's moving away from medicine for the average, which is the way that we've been treating people for the past 50 years, to medicine for the individual, and personalization of their lifestyle, diet, stress management, and their medication needs as well as nutrient needs. All of those features are creating an absolutely remarkable transformation in healthcare that will put the patient at the center of their system rather than the disease at the center. We've been a disease-centric society, focused on disease rather than focused on the individual patient, and that is transforming itself right now as we speak.
Well, in a way, this is going really back to ancient roots. As Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food.
Yes, I think that what we have seen, it's very interesting. It reminds me of the classic movie Back to the Future, is that through the lens of genomic science, which, as we all know, has started to decode the book of life, that's our human genome, so that we understand this code that's locked into our DNA. It was thought when that was deciphered in 2000, when the announcement was made in the Rose Garden, that we had suddenly decoded the human genome, that we would understand the genes that control all these diseases, and we would find a drug to treat each of those gene-related defects that was associated with a disease. And yet what was actually discovered is quite the opposite. It was found that most of these chronic diseases that we have, like heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, stroke, arthritis, dementia, most forms of cancer, are not caused by a single gene having a difficulty. And in fact, there is no single gene that codes for any of those diseases. But rather, what we have are the genes that actually tell us how we uniquely respond to our own environment, and how by the right environment, that's diet, lifestyle, exercise program or activity program, stress management, environmental exposures, by the design of the right program, our genes will express good health. But throw those genes into a faulty environment based on our own genetic uniqueness, and now those genes expressed alarm, which we call disease. This is a tremendously empowering new discovery in the 21st century, because we can't change our genes easily, but what we can change is the message that's going to our genes from our lifestyle, our diet, and environment that can alter then how our genes experience health and or disease. So my belief is that this empowers individuals to take charge and work in collaboration with their healthcare provider, their doctors, and other healthcare members of the healthcare community to create a program that's personalized to their specific need so that they can fully access that God-given health that resides in all of our genomes that may have been blunted or may have been perverted as a consequence of things that the genes were exposed to that just weren't in their best interest. And I think this is a truly as big a change in thinking as if we went to the last turn of the century, going from the 19th to the 20th century, where the big discovery of that age was discovering how bacteria and microorganisms caused infectious disease, from which things like immunity through immunization and later antibiotics were developed that gave birth to the medicine of the 20th century. We're now seeing the birthing of the medicine of the 21st century that's a patient-centered form of healthcare that utilizes these big levers of how the genes interact with the environment and lifestyle to create good health as the tools for our future.
Well, epigenetics is a science that has been coming up with some of the most amazing research results, many of which you describe in your book. Your book, by the way, is absolutely wonderful, and it's a medical science nerd's paradise. One of the things that you describe in your book, for example, was an experiment on lab animals that showed that changes in the genetic expression could be induced through stress or diet or whatever it was, and these changes could then be passed on to the next generation. So I think the implications here for how we are going down this path of increasing diabetes and cancer and so on could do well to look at this mechanism. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I think this is a very, very remarkable part of this the story of the age in which we find ourselves, which is an age of remarkable discovery. What has been found, as you said, is that there are certain things that we are exposed to through our daily living. They could be things like the foods we're eating, or they could be chemicals that we're exposed to, or drugs that we're taking, or extraordinary stress episodes in our life that actually put marks on our genes. And these marks are marks that either say, read this part of our book of life, which we call our gene, or don't read here. This is not allowed to be read anymore. And these marks then alter the way that our genes are expressed, and therefore they alter then how we look, act, and feel. And this concept that there are things that could actually alter the way that our genes are expressing themselves is a very, very dramatic new kind of concept that gives the opportunity for us to recognize that we can alter these marks on our genes, both putting different marks on and taking other marks off, so that we can open up the chapters in our book of life that are what I call our bliss chapters. They are the good health chapters. They're the wonderful day chapters. They are the exhilaration of living chapters. And we can silence those chapters of our book that I call the Greek tragedy chapters, the chapters that are related to dark days and depression and disease and inflammation and things that cause people anguish. So I think that this discussion of epigenetics and how it relates to the opportunity for people to construct healthy living outcomes for a century of good living is a very, very remarkable new breakthrough in thinking. And by the way, it's really one of the fundamental themes that I've tried to weave through the Disease Delusion, the book, in helping the reader to understand how they personally can access this information through the various questionnaires and chapters that I have so that they can design their own program that will start using this information as a tool in their own lives rather than just being out there as discoveries without application.
This approach also raises a lot of warning flags in terms of what we are doing either on the commercial level through exposure to antibiotics, through exposure to toxins in our food supply, as well as our emotional level. Talk about the different kinds of environmental stresses that can change genetic expression, both internal and external.
Yes, again, these are parts of this emerging story, which is so fascinating. I've had the privilege of interacting with the person I call the father of nutritional epigenetics. His name is Randy Jirtle, Jirtle. Dr. Jirtle was a professor at Duke University Medical School for many years and made the most remarkable discovery with his postdoctoral student, Robert Waterland, in which they found that when they fed a pregnant animal called the agouti mouse a very high level of vitamin B12 and folic acid in their diet, and this is an animal that was newly pregnant, that the offspring of that animal, of the mother, not only had a different coat color, meaning their fur was a different color, but most interestingly, they lived about 30 to 50% longer than their mothers, and whereas their mothers, often because of the genetic nature of these mice, would get cancer and diabetes early in their lifespan, the offspring who were raised by mothers who were supplemented in the diet early in their pregnancy with vitamin B12 and folic acid ended up not only living longer, but didn't get diabetes and didn't get cancer and stayed lean. They didn't get fat like their mothers. And so this discovery in this rodent animal model gave rise to the scientific community suddenly recognizing that there was something about nutrition that could absolutely influence the development of the embryo in such a way that it could alter how it looked, act, and performed in terms of its health over the course of its lifespan. And before that, we recognized that prenatal nutrition was important, and we certainly recognized that mothers needed to be on a good diet when they were conceiving children. But we didn't recognize the potential implications of specific nutrients and what role they could play in actually completely changing the way genes were expressed in their offspring so that those offspring became more susceptible to disease. They had different problems that the genes would express these alarm responses. And I think that this was further amplified when investigators at McGill University in Montreal, Canada, looked at the impact of extraordinary stress on pregnant animals, in which they found, once again, just as with nutrients, that excessive stress during early pregnancy resulted in offspring that had epigenetic marks placed on their book of life, on their genome, so that the offspring were extraordinarily stress-prone. They had hypervigilant personalities. They were aggressive. They were almost like they were angry and hostile. And this was a consequence, again, when they did very detailed analysis of the effects of this stress on their genome, found that they had altered the marks on the genome through the stress during pregnancy such that it altered their gene expression and changed their pattern of behavior into a much more aggressive, much more hypervigilant personality type. So when you start thinking of things like children who are in situations either in utero or in infancy, which are hostile or fearful situations, highly stressful areas of the world where there's war or there's a concern about safety, what effects that has potentially on behavior through these epigenetic changes, it raises extraordinarily new and important questions about how we are designing our environment, how we're living our lifestyles, what kind of chemicals and stress patterns we're exposed to, because all of these factors appear to have the potential of altering genetic expression. Now, the good news in the story is that many of these marks that are put on by altered diet or chemical exposure or stress can also be removed. They're labile, and they can be replaced with friendly messages. So it's not a one-way street. It appears as if many of these are reversible, but it does raise in our, I think, observation that we have to recognize that there's no drug that's going to treat these problems. We need to treat them by altering the epigenetic profile, by changing the way that the messages come to the genes through our diet, lifestyle, and environment and stress patterns so that we end up with a different health outcome.
You have a number of kind of collections of items, like your 7 factors that you need to deal with in your health and your 4 R's. Let's start with some of the factors that we need to consider, like diet, detoxification, etc. What are they?
Yeah, I think that's what I've tried to do in the book is to take the learning that we've had over the last 30-plus years in the development of what I have called the Institute for Functional Medicine, that now has had over 100,000 healthcare practitioners go through our courses over the last 25 years, and distill down the literally thousands of medical studies and research papers that have been published and try to understand what they're telling us about ways that people could design personalized programs for their own health without becoming an expert in health sciences or in medicine. And when we did this evaluation, we found that there were basically 7 buckets that these studies could be divided among that related to what we call the 7 key or core physiological processes. These are the things that control the big levers that control the effects that ultimately give rise to disease. And when I say disease, I mean many of the chronic age diseases like arthritis or diabetes or heart disease or dementia. And these 7 core physiological processes, which I describe in the book in 7 different chapters, so we go through each one of them, providing a questionnaire at the beginning of each chapter so a person who is reading the book can determine whether that chapter really relates to their specific situation. We call these the core imbalances. In other words, where are the core imbalances that that particular person has in these 7 processes that may give rise to health-related issues, chronic health-related issues. So these 7 different core physiological processes include things such as digestive function. And our digestive function, which obviously has to do with our gastrointestinal system, is more than just breaking down food into absorbable nutrients that get into our body and can help to nourish cells. It also is where more than 50% of our body's immune system is localized. And this is a new aha for many people to recognize that our digestive organ, our digestive system, is more than just a piece of plumbing. It also is a very important part of our body's immune system. So when we talk about a person who has an imbalance in their core physiological process associated with the digestive system, we then think they have an imbalance in their immune system. They become more susceptible to various types of inflammatory conditions like arthritis. They have potentially more risk to various types of problems in their cardiac and heart system and in their brain with dementia. So we want to find an approach towards restoring proper function of this gastrointestinal disturbance. And the way we do that is we've designed a program that we call the 4R program. The R's each stand for a specific component of the program. So those 4 R's are remove is the first R, which means remove the offenders that are activating the immune system of the intestinal tract, and these could be allergens, they could be things like gluten in the diet, they could be infectious agents that are found in our diet like the yeast Candida albicans or various types of bacteria like Clostridia that are in spoiled food, or it may be also chemicals that are found in the food as food additives or food adulterants that cause the immune system of our intestinal tract to be activated. So that's the first R, is remove. The second R is replace, and that's related to people who may not be secreting enough digestive enzymes to properly digest their food properly and break down protein and carbohydrate and fat into the building blocks that can be absorbed. So we talk about what to do if you want to replace digestive enzymes and replace stomach acid to properly activate your digestive system.
That's a common problem as we get older, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. We find a very high prevalence of what we call a smoothing out of the intestinal line or the stomach lining, which is where stomach acid is secreted. So you start getting a low acid secretion from the cells called the parietal cells of the stomach, and that then causes the person to have a lowered ability actually to digest their food and abstract their nutrients. And this is even further aggravated if they're on agents that would be considered antacids like proton pump inhibitors or these anti-acid compounds that block stomach acid. So that could even further aggravate the problem. And then they end up not being able to absorb nutrients like vitamin B12 effectively, and they have a problem with anemia, and then that causes all sorts of other problems. So this R of replace has to do with making sure there's proper stomach acid and digestive enzymes. The third R stands for reinoculate, and this is adding back to friendly bacteria that live in our intestinal tract to help digest and influence properly our immune system. So these are the probiotic and prebiotic supplements that we often use to restore a proper digestive function. And then the last R, the fourth R, stands for recovery or repair, and these are nutrients that are known to be necessary for the body's digestive system to heal itself. It includes things like zinc, vitamin E, essential omega-3 fatty acids or fish oils, the amino acid arginine, the amino acid glutamine. I discuss each of these in the book and describe how this 4R program can be applied. So this is an example of one of the 7 core physiological processes and how, if it's imbalanced, we can restore function using an appropriate personalized approach, which is the whole focus of why the book was written.
Yeah, the word personalized is the magic word because you point out all of these different factors, and the different permutations and combinations of them are infinite, I guess. So
I think that we had medicine so long that was really designed for the average person. We used to call it the 70-kilogram human. You know, the mythical average person that in my 40 years in healthcare I've yet to see an average mythical human being, because each person brings their own uniqueness into the clinic and into their needs. So we're moving actually from this medicine of the average, which is a pill for an ill for every disease, to a medicine of the individual, where personalized programs will really greatly improve success and outcome and reduce adverse side effects and improve effectiveness. And that's what the disease delusion is all about. Obviously, the title of the book almost seems like a contradiction in terms. Why would I call a book Disease Delusion? I mean, there's no delusion that we have diseases. That's obviously true. The delusion, however, is where these diseases came from. We have thought for a long time, I think, many people, that these are genetic. They just were inherited. We got the bad luck of the draw, and we got the genes for heart disease or diabetes or high blood pressure or whatever the disease might be. And the 21st century has really found that only, say, a small percentage of the genes are of the diseases are hardwired to our genes. In fact, 20 to 25% of the cause of chronic disease is hardwired to our gene. The other 75 to 80% comes from the message that our genes receive from our lifestyle, environment, diet, and so forth. So I think that we have a lot more exciting opportunities to create good health than we ever recognize when we can read this information correctly and implement a personalized program.
You talk about the 80-20 rule, and you emphasize the value of working with an enlightened medical practitioner. How far can a person go just with your book? And are you just covering your backside on the practitioner bit, or is that a real essential component of achieving your best health?
Well, I think, Miriam, you and I probably have the same understanding and advocacy in this with that question, and that is what we've recognized is there is no one that's more concerned about our health than us. Although most people are not medical experts, they do live in their bodies 24/7, 365, and they have more knowledge about how their body responds to the world than any medical practitioner would have, and they actually have probably more interest in good health than the medical practitioner would have because it's their body they're living in. So the medicine of the 21st century is a medicine that's going to be a partnership type relationship between the healthcare provider doctor, who has a tremendous amount of knowledge about the technologies and the concepts and the diagnostic criteria that relate to health and disease. So they are experts in the field, but that should be then seen in partnership with the patient who knows more about their body and about their responses. And so this new healthcare relationship is one of partnership rather than what I would call command and control or rescuer victim is what some people would term the old relationship, in which the victim, the perceived victim being the patient, comes on bended knees to the rescuer, which is the doctor, to rescue them from their ravage of disease and provides them a prescription for a specific set of pills that they take that will solve the problem. That model just has not been successful in managing the outcome of chronic illness. The new model is that the patient comes as an informed, interested patient in their long-term health outcome and works collaboratively with the healthcare provider to design a personalized program that will then deliver an outcome that is administered by the patient, because they're the one that's going to go home and do it. It's their life. They're the one that's going to eat, live, drink, breathe, think, and act, and take medicines. So they then have to become the universal controller of their own program. And I think that's why I believe disease delusion is a helpful first step, because a patient can only become an informed partner if they know the questions to ask. If they don't know the questions to ask, it's impossible to get an answer, because you can only get an answer to a question you ask. So the book really helps the reader, I believe, to navigate more effectively the appropriate questions that they need to ask about themselves, so they'll become an informed patient and an informed health consumer, and they will take charge successfully of their health trajectory for 80, 90, or 100 years of living. That's the new health mentality.
Although it's very seductive to have a symptom and say, go to a doctor and ask for a pill to deal with that symptom. But what I see is people, ending up with dozens of pills, each additional pill treating the side effects of the previous one. And you never actually get to the cause of the imbalance. You're only treating symptoms upon symptoms. So I guess what you're saying is it's up to the individual to say, okay, this stops here. I want to get to the bottom of it. And it takes discipline. It takes actual application. We all know that we have to exercise and eat right. But do we do it? Sometimes. So how long would you say that it takes to be really rigorous in following one of these programs to actually see results in your health?
Well, again, I think you hit on a very important point there. I think that the old KISS concept, keep it simple, is a very important part of any program, because if we make this so complicated and so unusual, the probability that any one of us will stay on that program and really participate in the long term is very low. And that's what I've tried to be very realistic about in the design of the book, is to try to really talk through, as you say, the 80% rule. What are the big things that can be done to really make significant changes in health outcome without going into such a rigorous program that your life becomes so restricted that you can't even enjoy it? And, there are some fairly simple first-line things that we all recognize should be done. I mean, we should stop smoking, obviously, and there are now many approaches that are successful for cessation of smoking. And we should stop drinking high-fructose corn syrup sweetened beverages, because they're really just not in the best interest of our good health, and that's something that we all could do fairly simply. It's not that difficult to give up HFCF sweetened beverages. So these are some of the big things. Then we get into the next level of things, which is, okay, how do I introduce a diet without becoming a food faddist? How can I still enjoy going to restaurants? How can I eat to my specific need? I mean, the food for one might be the poison for another. So we want to make sure that our particular food selections are designed around our specific needs. And then we want variety. We want ability to eat different types of foods, but we want to keep certain ground rules that are related to our genetic need. And that's, again, the kind of the things that I talk about in the book, is how do you read your genes in such a way that you can design your dietary kind of basic structure or program without becoming a food faddist. I think that these big questions, when introduced, can result in my experience, in, say, 10 to 12 weeks, in dramatic changes in healthcare. I mean, we have literally thousands of patients that we followed over the years in our research on all sorts of different types of clinical studies, that I think there's a general rule of thumb that in 10 to 12 weeks, with a person committing themselves to a program that they can apply and stay on, that they can have absolutely dramatic changes in their health, their vitality, their sleep patterns, their energy, their alertness, reduction of pain, improved digestion, better mobility. I mean, all sorts of things that come as accessory side effects of putting a good program in place, a personalized lifestyle healthcare program. And that's, to me, if we talk about life insurance, it's interesting what the term life insurance really applies to what I call death insurance. It pays the beneficiaries for our death. Life insurance is something that lives with us every day, that ensures good living. And so what this really reflects, the way I'm describing it, is a living life insurance program. It pays to the beneficiary, which is the person, an annuity every day of living, because they feel better, higher energy, higher performance, less disability, and ultimately less disease that's going to rob from them years of living, and it's going to improve their health span.
I'm reminded of the old story of the frog in the pot of water when you gradually turn up the heat. We gradually lose function as we age. We gradually have aches and pains come on. And we kind of forget what it really feels like to be pain-free, to have energy. And what you're offering in your book is a reversal of all those little things that rob us of our energy. And, with relatively small interventions, you talk about functional foods like green tea and hops. Tell us about the role of these kind of small interventions.
Yes, again, I think that as contrasted to taking a pharmaceutical product, which has been designed very effectively by medicinal and pharmaceutical scientists for a very hard-hitting response to a body's function. So these are great products if you're in crisis and need a therapeutic agent to take charge of your metabolism or physiology immediately. And so this pharmacopoeia, the range of thousands of drugs that we have available, when used in the right way, for short periods of time, can be lifesavers. There's no question about it. And in fact, if I have a crisis illness or disease condition, I'd like it to be in the United States, and I'd like it to be treated with the extraordinary quality of healthcare professionals we have in the medical centers of the United States. But these kind of hard-hitting drugs are not so good for the management of chronic complaints because they, over the long term, have many adverse side effects. So we pay some price for their long-term use in terms of their adverse effects. So the question is, what's the alternative? And the alternative is to recognize that within our foods, historically, if we're eating minimally processed variety of foods from plant and animal sources, that we're getting a very large number of bioactive compounds or bioactive substances, particularly from plants. These are called phytochemicals, phyto, P-H-Y-T-O, meaning plant-derived substances. These phytochemical nutrients, like bioflavonoids and isoflavones and quinones and polyphenols, and I mean, there's thousands of these different compounds found in plant foods, fruits and vegetables and grains and beans. These compounds have tremendous influence, although they're small in amount and they have very lower activities relative to a drug, but over the course of living, they can really influence in a very effective way the channeling of our physiology and our gene expression patterns in a healthy way. They tend to be the shop guards of controlling healthy physiological function, and they do so by discoveries that we've made only within the last 20 years in the way that they help the genes to express themselves in a healthy fashion. And therefore, these phytochemicals that are found in a rich plant-based diet that's rich in colors of green and red and orange and blue and purple and yellow and these colored compounds that are found in plant foods, which are these phytochemicals, play very, very important roles in modulating our physiology and helping to normalize our health and restricting then these disturbances that we call disease that are associated with altered gene expression. These discoveries, which I describe in the book, are really tremendously important discoveries only within the last 10 or 20 years that help us to recognize that these phytonutrients, phytochemicals that we have often taken out of foods when we process foods and made them white, like white flour, for instance, that these are often the missing link that are necessary in a diet for a person to continue to achieve at high level of health throughout living. And the removal of those from our diets was associated with the increasing incidence of these chronic illnesses. So this, they say health is not a mystery. It's only a mystery if you don't ask the right questions. Once you start asking the right questions, the answers are often there from these extraordinary discoveries. And then we can apply that information successfully by constructing an appropriate diet and lifestyle so that it will retard and prevent the onset of these chronic age-related diseases.
Well, give us some examples of conditions and what phytochemical interventions, phytonutrient interventions you would suggest.
Yeah, let's use one that I think has been on the minds of a lot of people because it's been in the news lately, and that's the Indian spice turmeric. As you probably recognize, that very vivid yellow spice, Indian spice, has a substance in it called curcumin. And curcumin is a phytochemical that is made by the plant that produces the spice turmeric. And curcumin has been found through extensive studies. In fact, there are literally thousands of different types of medical and biochemical and cellular studies on curcumin. And what it's been found is that it participates, just as I was describing, in helping to retard the onset of certain kinds of inflammatory processes that are associated with diabetes and heart disease and arthritis. So the simple explanation would be to say it's an anti-inflammatory, but it's actually more than an anti-inflammatory. What it really represents is an agent that modulates gene expression, so it prevents the expression of our book of life that's associated with these inflammatory states that are associated with multiple types of chronic illness. So curcumin would be a good example of a substance that you don't need a whole lot of in your diet, but a small amount can have a very important role to play in modulating inflammatory disorders. Another example would be, we've heard a lot about green tea, and the tea plant has in it a variety of phytochemicals, one of which is called epigallocatechin gallate, or ECGC is its abbreviation. And this particular phytochemical has a very powerful role to play in preventing adverse cellular division, meaning things that are associated with the cancer induction process. So it's been called a chemopreventive nutrient, meaning it's a cancer preventive agent, and it has very powerful role to play in keeping cell DNA stabilized so that it doesn't undergo transitions into a oncogenic or cancerous state. Another one that has gotten a lot in the news recently is from grape skins and from peanut skins, and it's called resveratrol. And resveratrol, turns out, has a very, very interesting role to play because resveratrol appears to modulate a whole family of genes that are expressed that are related to what many people call longevity genes. They tend to regulate life, what's called biological aging. So resveratrol from grapes and peanuts is another one of those phytochemicals that has been found to be very useful. And I could go on and on. There are literally thousands of these that have different personalities that are found in a complex plant-based diet.
You had a lovely little word. Was it hormetic, or what was the term for a small effect, a large effect from a small quantity?
Yeah, that's called hormesis. That's the term that's used, Hormesis. Hormesis is a term that really refers to a much larger effect from a small amount of exposure of a substance than to be expected. And these substances that are found in plants that I've been describing have an effect that's called xenohormesis, meaning xeno is an X-E-N, meaning a foreigner, because these are not substances that the body makes. They come from plants, so they're a foreign substance to the body, but they have this beneficial hormetic effect, meaning a small amount of exposure to the body produces a much more important outcome, positive effect than we would have predicted. So xenohormesis is a term that has been applied to the effect that these phytochemicals have in helping to stabilize our health and resist disease.
But it works the other way as well. You mentioned in your book the plasticizer.
Yes, that's true. That if you look at certain foreign chemicals, like let's take one that's in the news a lot recently, BPA, bisphenol A, which is a plasticizer found in all sorts of plastics that's ubiquitous in our environment. That has a hormetic effect, a xenohormetic effect, but it's an opposite effect. It induces genes to be in an inflammatory state. It induces them to undergo cellular replication, meaning can induce cancer in animals. So a very low level of exposure to BPA may have not a good effect on gene expression, but a bad effect on gene expression. So xenohormesis can play both ways. It can both be good in that it stabilizes gene expression, or it can be bad in that it causes adverse expression of alarm genes that turn on adverse cellular function and disease.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the institutes that you set up.
Yes, what I recognized a few years ago was that we really needed two kinds of institutes to help transform healthcare. One is one that would teach healthcare providers and doctors about these concepts that I've been describing so that they could implement them more effectively in their practice. And so we established in 1991 the Institute for Functional Medicine, which, as I mentioned earlier, I'm very proud to say now has had over 100,000 doctors go through its courses. It provides continuing medical education courses both in the United States, Canada, and around the world. And it has a textbook of medicine that's used in a number of medical schools in the country. So it is a very, very influential organization in the health education or let's call it medical education of healthcare providers. And in fact, there's a very good website for that, which you can go Google Institute for Functional Medicine and go to the website and learn more about it. The other part of this process, however, is educating healthcare consumers, health-conscious people who really want to know more about this and how to employ these concepts in their lives. And so we established a second institute called the Personalized Lifestyle Medical Institute, or Personalized Lifestyle Medicine Institute, or PLMI, that would be more involved with trying to educate consumers about how they can use these new breakthrough concepts in their lives to achieve health. So we have a website, obviously, for that as well. You can Google Personalized Lifestyle Medicine Institute or plminstitute.org, and that will then open up a whole variety of resources from experts in the field that have been blogging on these topics and news to use as it relates to new discoveries that are being made in this area. So the combination of healthcare consumers becoming more enlightened and healthcare professionals becoming more knowledgeable hopefully drives from the top to the bottom to the middle, so we transform healthcare, because we need to really form a true healthcare system. We have a very good disease care system, but we do not have a healthcare system presently. So this is an opportunity right now to really create a healthcare system in the country that will help beat back this rising tide of chronic illness.
And a word to the perhaps the insurance companies who have a big stake in the healthcare system. What do you think would be the effect of widespread adoption of your approach on the costs of healthcare in the country?
You know, it's very interesting. We've been doing a lot of work in communicating now with major healthcare insurance providers, third-party providers, as well as discussing this with Medicare and with Veterans Administration administrators. And there's a general kind of common theme among all these groups that we need to find ways of saving money, because we are using our crisis care system way too much, our disease care, hospital-based medicine, and that we have to reduce costs by getting people healthier. Everybody is aligned to that objective. The problem is that a lot of people don't know, they don't have an idea of a system that's actually going to create a reduction in the burden of expenses in the hospital-based medicine system. The concepts that I've been describing, which are affiliated with now by literally tens of thousands of other professionals that I'm associated with, is such a system that would actually reduce the burden of unnecessary expenses for crisis medicine and acute disease treatment. And it would allow the compression of sickness and illness. It would improve health span of individuals, and it would deliver an outcome of saving literally tens of billions of dollars of expenditures a year that are not necessary once you start implementing the appropriate personalized healthcare model. It would also do something that probably is the most important of all, and that it would be reducing human suffering, unnecessary loss of good health and burden of disease, and all the kinds of difficulties occur in life when we start losing our good health and our mobility and our kind of freedom of range of motion, and we start having restricted issues related to health problems. So I think it's a winner on every level. It's a winner in that it delivers to the individual a feeling of compressing illness and improving their health span, and it wins on the level of our economics by reducing unnecessary expenditures. And probably most people are aware of the fact that right now, if our aging baby boomers have the same disease patterns as their parents, as they go now into their 60s and 70s, the amount of medical services they will require will be something on the order of $35 trillion of expenses that would be offered, would be asked of Medicare. $35 trillion, or over twofold the present national debt, just to serve those chronic disease needs of an aging baby boomer population. Well, clearly that could bankrupt the country. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to find ways of reducing this financial burden and improving the health of individuals. And I'm suggesting that what we talk about in the disease delusion is such a model. It would deliver that outcome. It would reduce the burden of unnecessary expenses. It would improve the health of the individual, and it would give the freedom of people from disease so they could live, decades of high-level living without having the worry of disease at their coattail.
From your lips to the ears of the medical establishment, the politicians, and the general public. We've been speaking with Dr. Jeffrey Bland, author of The Disease Delusion, Conquering the Causes of Chronic Illness for a Healthier, Longer, and Happier Life. Dr. Bland, thank you so much for being with us today and for the wonderful work that you've been doing.
Well, Miriam, thank you, and thanks for your advocacy. I think what you're doing is absolutely critically important to help catalyze this transformation in healthcare. I appreciate it very much.
Next week, our guest is Bruce Davis, Ph.D., talking about his book, The Love Letters. St. Francis and St. Clare of Assisi meet Pope Francis. And now we're going to close with our track of the week from the fabulous Gina Citoli called Celebrate Your Life. Wow, the dynamic creative force that is Gina Citoli singing about a celebration of life. Gina's website is ginacitoli.com. That's GINACITOLI.com. And you can find out about her on our Speakers Bureau website, luminaryvoices.com.
And while we're in the neighborhood of websites, do visit our very own website, ncreview.com. Well, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll join us again next week. Until then, I'm Miriam Knight for New Consciousness Review. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.